Hello and thank you for joining me. This is Stephen Cammarata, your friend with WINEWORKZ, and I wrote this book. This is called Please Don't Die. I've read to you on my channel book 1, Please Don't Die, I've said to myself. And this here that I'm going to read now, very happy to read now, this is book 2, Please Don't Die, Dad. My dad passed on October 29th, 1995. He was an amazing, solid guy. So this is the tribute to my dad. This is what I'm about to read right now. So this is Chapter 1 of Book 2, Please Don't Die, Dad. And the title of this Chapter 1 is called The Party. I hate you, Dad, and I wish I was never born. I shouted directly in his face as I slammed the door hard with thunderous rage. My first instincts were to destroy my entire room and trash everything in sight. The only problem with that idea was I shared a room with my older brother, David. And if I was to follow this plan, surely some of his things would be casualties of collateral damage, thus exacerbating my problems tenfold. My father would undoubtedly kill me if I started breaking things, even if they were just my own things. Some behaviors absolutely would not be tolerated by my father, no matter how angry I was or what the circumstances were at the time. I had never been so angry in my entire life. I was seeing red, and it felt like smoke was coming from my ears. How could my father do this to me? How could my father be so obtuse? I threw myself on the bed and I buried my face in my pillow and I began screaming at the top of my lungs like an enraged toddler, save for the fact that I was actually a teenager acting like a toddler. Today was Wednesday, and I remember it well, and this is what led to that moment. I remember Monday of that week with even more clarity because it was one of the best days of my life. I had the coolest dad in the world, and I loved him so much with all my heart. Sure, he could be a dick sometimes, and he would often rule with an iron fist, making it clear that he was not my friend before he was my dad. He was the best dad. I asked him if I could have a small party at the house on Friday night and invite some of my closest friends from school. When he actually said yes, I was shocked. He didn't even hesitate. Even more shocking was that he said as long as anyone who drove to the party relinquished their car keys and agreed to spend the night, we could purchase one beer ball from Consumers Beverages. My dad didn't even know what a beer ball was at the time, but I explained to him that it was a very small amount of beer for very small gatherings. Okay, so I embellished a little bit. It was actually a lot of beer for us lightweights, especially adding to the fact that I had plans to secretly purchase a second beer ball without my father's knowledge and to keep it hidden so he would only think there was one beer ball that we had originally purchased. The cool thing about beer balls that my father could never possibly conjure was that when they were empty, you could cut a hole in the bottom large enough to put it over your head, and you could turn them into a custom, one-of-a-kind apparatus to smoke weed with. So it was all set. The beer ball was at the house, chilling in the spare refrigerator that we kept that we kept from our old house that was now in the basement. I was so excited. I would go down to the basement several times throughout the following days just to open up the refrigerator and stare at my precious beer ball and relish in the thought that what this party was going to do for my cool kid status at school. Luckily, my mom would be out of town on Friday night because there was no way she would condone underage drinking under her roof. But as long as we drank responsibly, my dad was cool with it. And he reasoned that when he was a teenager, the drinking age was 18. And we were all 18 now, with some of us going on 19. And you could legally drink in Canada at 19 years old. And our house was only 25 miles from Canada, so what's the big deal? This was a time for celebration. I needed to score a bag of weed. Mission accomplished. Getting weed was a very easy thing to do, and I had no problems. The problem was hiding it somewhere where nobody could find it once I got it back to the house. One of my favorite stash locations was in my sock and underwear drawer, rolled up inside a pair of socks and shoved in the back of the drawer. Also, I had found this super cool fake book at a garage sale once that had a stash box hidden inside the pages. It was the coolest thing ever until the day my brother found out about it, rendering it useless to me for any future use. Until I could figure out where I could hide the stuff, I just decided to keep it in my jacket pocket until after dinner, and I would make the decision as to where I would safely store my weed. I placed my jacket on the chair and I began to set the table as my mother began preparing for dinner. Dad should be home soon from work, and I remember thinking that maybe my mom would tell him that I decided to set the table on my own accord without even being asked. This small bit of credibility would resonate soundly with my father and solidify in his mind that I actually was a pretty good son, and the party that he permitted me to have was well deserved. But none of that happened. When Dad came through the door, I could tell instantly that he was in a lousy mood. I don't even think he said hello, but one thing he did say was, "Why is the milk container on the table if dinner is not ready yet? Stephen, put the milk back in the refrigerator until dinner is served. I prefer my food to be warm, not my milk." As I did what he asked, I watched his eyes locked on my jacket that I left hanging on the back of the chair. My stomach tightened as I saw him reach for it. "Damn it, Stephen, how many times do I have to tell you to hang your jacket up in the front hall closet? This isn't a flop house." With that, he swiftly grabbed the jacket from the chair and he threw it in my direction. As it hit the floor, the marijuana pipe I had been using earlier flew out of the pocket and it fell to the floor in plain sight. He saw it immediately. It was sealed in a Ziploc baggie so it wouldn't smell and was accompanied by a pack of matches. And that was when all hell broke loose. He was furious. He advanced towards me and in one swift motion grabbed the Ziploc baggie and the jacket and began rifling through the pockets, finding an open pack of Marlboro Reds that he promptly crushed between his fingers. As his search continued, my mind raced. I will just tell him that yes, the cigarettes are mine, but the marijuana pipe was not, and I was just holding it for a friend, and maybe my punishment wouldn't be too severe. The bag of weed was hidden in the inside pocket, and maybe he wouldn't even find it. Maybe he didn't even know that my jacket had an inside pocket. No such luck. He found the weed, and he was beyond pissed. "Go to your room, now," he shouted, and with his arm extended and finger pointing upstairs. As I climbed the stairs, I was trying to imagine what would happen next. It had been a while since I got in trouble for anything, so maybe this wouldn't be too bad. I was definitely too old to be spanked like when I was a younger kid. What would he do? Drugs were strictly prohibited in this house, and this was a serious offense. Both my mom and dad knew I tried weed before because of the time I got caught doing it in school, but we never really talked about it since. I told them it was just a one-time thing and I would never do it again. I knew my dad was furious, and as the minutes passed, I could still hear him yelling about the incident downstairs. I was actually terrified. I don't think I've ever seen him this angry. Not since the time we were at our old house and I saw him crush a thick glass milk bottle with his bare hands in frustration when my brother and I got caught throwing food at each other. I'll never forget that day realizing how impossibly strong my dad was to be able to do that. As I watched the milk and shattered glass explode onto the kitchen table, I realized that until that moment, I have never seen that shade of red on a human face before, not even on television. And he was super angry as he was now. This is not good, I thought to myself as I heard his feet pounding up the stairs en route to my bedroom. I expected to see the angry red face at the door, but what I received instead was more of a calm, relaxed look of disappointment with firm resolve. With no preamble, he stood at my doorway and he looked at me directly as he spoke. "That's it. Consider the party canceled. You can tell your idiot friends to stay home. They are not welcome here." My heart sank to my stomach. I felt like I was going to actually throw up. Not my party. He couldn't possibly cancel my party. I was immediately engulfed in dread as his words of authority washed over me. When my father first said I could have the party, we agreed that 20 people could attend. But what he didn't realize was that I had invited upwards of 40 people. And high school being high school, even that number was sure to escalate. Keep in mind the party was in only 2 days, and it was the talk of the school. Everybody was excited about it. And this was well before cell phones existed. So it wasn't like I could do a group text and get the word out, as embarrassing as that would have been. Anyway, I would have to face the music and tell as many people in person that the party was canceled. My high school career would be ruined and I would be the laughing stock. Shock turned to anger, and I could feel the rage taking over my thoughts and flow through my veins and take control of my breath. This could not be happening. Dad, you cannot cancel my party. I already told everyone about it. You will ruin me. I will look like a fool. Well, you should have thought of that before you decided to bring drugs into this house, he said. I stood up and I walked toward him, pleading, and he wouldn't budge. He said, I'm sorry, it's done. No party and no more discussion. That is final. As I screamed at him that I hated him and I wished I had never been born, slamming the door in his face, I realized this was the very first time in my life I ever had spoken to my father like that. The very first time I swore directly to him. But I didn't care. My life was over. I didn't care about anything. I flung myself on my bed, and in a rage, I closed my fist and started punching the wooden army chest that I had by my bedside. The wood was hard and certainly was not meant for punching. The lamp that once resided on the top of that chest went crashing to the floor, as did the alarm clock and other various trinkets that I had kept there. My knuckles ached as I uncontrollably and repeatedly punched and punched and punched. As my knuckles bled, I didn't even hear the door open, but suddenly I felt my dad's knee on my back, and he grabbed at my bloody fist. There was blood splattered all over the white wall by the bed, and the hard wood of the army chest was splintered and destroyed. I braced for impact as I waited for him to hit me, but he never did. He wrapped his big arms around me in a bear hug, trying to calm me down and to tell me to stop thrashing. What happened next was not only unexpected, but it was another first. This was the first time in my entire life, ever, that I had seen my father cry, and it crushed me. I felt horrible as I watched the tears well up in his eyes and slowly roll down his face. And I remember now that he didn't even cry many years later when he told me that his father had died. He simply hung up the phone after he received the call and said, your grandfather just died. No tears, no nothing. And believe me, my dad and his dad were very close and had a great relationship. But as he looked at me with extreme disappointment and grave concern, he was now crying as he said, fine, you can have your stupid party, Stephen. But this isn't over, and there will be consequences for your actions. I should have felt elated, but I did not. I felt like crap. I told my beloved father that I hated him and that I wish I was never born, all over a party. I was disgusted in myself. As he wiped the tears from his eyes with the sleeve of his dress shirt and headed for the door, he told me to go downstairs so my mother could bandage up my hand and determine if I had to go to the emergency room or not. I never did end up having dinner that night. I could not eat. I felt so many emotions, and I had so many feelings swirling about, but hunger was not one of them. I tried to apologize to my father, and he just waved me off and said he did not want to talk about it. To this day, that is the very first and the only time I've ever spoken to him like that, and it was the first and the only time that I've ever seen my father cry. And that's the end of chapter 1. Stay tuned for chapter 2.